you're up on stage. How are you doing this morning, mate?
Morning, James. I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, really excited to have you here. It's always nice to have a familiar face start the day. And I know you're not too shy of the camera, are you? You enjoy it.
You keep inviting me to an event, James, and I can't say no.
Well, that's because we create great memories, Anup. So thanks for being here and thanks for kicking off the day. We've got over 1,000 people from around Europe on this conversation. I'm looking forward to digging deep into how you think about strategy, process, how you go to market, and how you approach building successful sales teams. I guess just to start off, just to help us understand the context of where you currently are right now, can you just give us an overview of your role as GM for Attentive and maybe what some of the challenges you face being a leader over at Attentive?
Yeah, sure, James. Happy to. Before I do that, though, seeing that we're starting off, I'm just going to give you a big shout out and the Sales Confidence crew for SaaS Growth. For everyone in the audience, I would get everyone to do a live round of applause. If not, just stick a thumbs up in the chat to James and the team. This is really, really good to get so many people in the community together. So first of all, well done, James. But going on to your question around what my role is. So general manager at Attentive. For those that don't know Attentive, we are an SMS marketing platform. Probably one of the fastest growing businesses that I've ever worked for. And I've managed to thankfully work with some hypergrowth companies before. Yeah, look, the company was founded 6 years ago and it was predominantly in the US. So over the last 3 years, they went from, I don't know, 300 employees to 1,500 employees, massively scaling the number of customers, but it's all done in North America. Now, my job was to kind of bring some of that Attentive secret sauce, shall we say, to other geos. So right now I'm responsible for pretty much rest of the world. So based here in the UK with a hub that services the UK and EMEA, looking after Australia and APAC, and currently Canada sits in my remit as well. So it's been a crazy 18 months here. We've gone from servicing 4 countries to 20 as well, but it's just about building out the kind of organization. I kind of look at it in a way, James, as almost like a mini CEO type role, because you're kind of across not just sales, but across a number of different functions, and helping to almost have a startup within a scale up.
Amazing. I guess, one of the challenges you face being responsible for that wide international market is there's lots of geos, lots of different time zones. I know you've been doing a lot of traveling this year, so it's been keeping you busy, but like, how do you ensure alignment and consistency of performance across such a diverse team in so many different geos?
Yeah, really, really good question. I think for me, and where I've seen success with that historically, is by, first of all, having a clear idea and a clear vision, and then being able to clearly communicate that across the team, so there is full alignment. I think you have to keep telling people what our goal is, what our mission is, and more importantly, making sure it's crystal clear what everyone's contribution is in that success as well. So everyone knows, A, what they need to do, B, the part that they play in making the business successful from an international standpoint. And then it's about kind of just motivating and recognizing when people are doing the right actions or doing good things towards the business. So I think that's at a very, very high level, and the thing that keeps the alignment towards kind of goals and stuff. I think it's about understanding what we had as a business, because we have been truly successful in the US, and then being able to take that and kind of use the skill set that this team have in their respective geos. That's why they were hired, right? They were good in their geos, and they knew kind of contacts, and knew the sales motion, and refining something that was already kind of good, but localizing it for that geo.
Amazing. So
lastly, I'd probably say, yeah, you can't do it all. So kind of get yourself a strong leadership team that you can trust and empower them to go and do what they're good at as well.
Well, just on that, as we probably would go off tangent, just who makes up your leadership team? What's the kind of structure for that in the region for you that allows you to do what you do internationally?
So we've got obviously head of enterprise sales, mid-market sales, partnerships, CS, and then I've kind of got that for APAC as well, and EMEA. God, you asked me a spot now. There's head of international marketing. They're the main kind of functions.
Gotcha. Are you regularly kind of like bringing them together for stand up or huddle, like, you know, with that vision that you're imparting on them, even if you're distributed like around the globe?
Yeah, 100%. So I think it's really, it's you have to, right? Like you have to bring that team together, because that team need to work together as a machine. So what I can't afford to do is someone like them operate in silos. I think when we come together, our businesses or functions are intrinsically linked. So bringing the team together, understanding what's working, what's not working, where they can kind of gain support from each other to kind of remove blockers so that we can move forward in the right direction is really, really important. And we kind of work on a monthly top three. So everyone in the team, including myself, including my boss as well, to be fair, everyone has a top three. So we know what we're aiming for. And then at that point, how can other functions or other people help contribute to making sure that everyone achieves their top three goals?
Okay, gotcha. So strong prioritization. Now I know that you've had, you know, I know you well. There's a lot of humility around your experience, but you've had a really good run over the last 18 months of award ceremonies, and I was just curious, you know, to let go of your humility just for a moment. What do you think it is with your experience or your personality that makes you an effective leader of building high performance sales teams?
I don't know, maybe I'll ask you, James, what was the criteria for the self-confidence ones? And maybe I can kind of add to that as well. Remind me.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, for us, as you can imagine, in the UK, you know, there's thousands of sales leaders, right? And we get hundreds of nominations for different leaders. But for me, the essence of sales confidence is not just someone that takes, but also gives back and wants to look after the people that they represent. And I think what came across in the answers that we got from people that nominated you in particular was they felt inspired. You know, they felt they were looked after and they felt that you had their back. So I guess that extends to care. You seem, and again, you can correct me if you're right, that you genuinely care about the people that are around you. And I guess that's an attractive trait as a leader. What would you add to that?
Yeah, no, I think if you've seen any of my kind of talks before, one of the things that I'll always say is that if you kind of look after your people, they will kind of look after the number. And that's really important to me. And I think helping, like, I remember when I started out, James, and trying to get my shot, and you relied on people around you to give you that opportunity. And that's something that's always kind of been close to my heart, to making sure, looking for the kind of talent within and the potential, should I say, within people, and helping to kind of peel back the layers to help them kind of encourage them to kind of thrive. I think for me personally, I think, yeah, I'm also massively about feedback or about myself. So it doesn't matter what level you are or who you are in the business. I'm constantly always kind of like, okay, what could I do better? How could I help you? What is it that you want to achieve? And just so I can improve on a regular basis. And I think the last bit you mentioned was around paying it forward. So yeah, I think it's really important, especially in this type of community as well, is to ensure you can kind of help others and help them learn from things that you've done. And I know that I have mentors in my career, and I have relationships with that have helped me. And yeah, have that. And again, lastly, humility. I think it's important just to keep your feet grounded.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, you talked about mentorship, you talked about giving back. There's a lot of people naturally, unfortunately, in some ways, the tenure of a sales leader is not that long sometimes. You know, on average, they say like 14 to 18 months. So that means you're often starting over and over again quite regularly. I've got a question around like the first 90 days as a sales leader. When you come into a new business, what do you typically focus on in those first 90 days?
Yeah, good question. I think I tell you what I used to do, and I don't do anymore because it didn't work, was I used to come in and think, okay, I've identified some problems and I fixed those problems or solved those problems before. And before, I would be quite quick to say, oh, I've seen this, and just implement what I'd done before. Right now, my first 90 days, a lot of that is around analysis and not making decisions too quickly without getting a full rounded picture of the business. And predominantly those first 90 days will be focused on, like, again, I've got loads of sayings, but it'll be like the 3 Ps, James, which will be focusing time on the people, which people I need to connect with cross-functionally within the team, getting to know that team, understanding strengths, weaknesses, coaching needs, and so on. Around product, really trying to get deep into product, understand how that works, but also nuances in region for what I believe that we need in order to make the product successful. And lastly, would just be around kind of processes. And for those that are in kind of startups, scale-ups, you probably realize that sometimes you don't even have processes. So it's about just kind of stepping back, understand the process that we have, how they're kind of working and how they can be refined for international or for EMEA. But then also looking at processes that we don't currently have, and how we can kind of implement those as well. So I'd say, yeah, those 3 things. First 90 days, don't be quick to kind of jump in straight away. Step back, analyze, and look at the people, the product, and the processes.
People, product, process. Great. That segues nicely into my next question. I mean, you've been quite, honest, and it's obvious how effective Attentive's growth has been in the US, right? Just staggering hyper growth that you've been able to bring to Europe and the international market. But has there been some strategy or process that you've had to implement in this market that maybe wasn't happening in the US, or just something that's been successful in building out the markets internationally?
I think it is fundamentally different. So if I look at the US, where text marketing is massively popular already, I think the fundamental difference there is it's why Attentive, why now, is the kind of motion in the pitch. When you look at international markets, I think you have to take one step back, and you're looking at why SMS, why Attentive, why now. So that first part is like, how do I create evangelists of our product? How do I kind of create that brand in region and the regions that we are in? So I think that's hugely important to be able to do that. But the one thing that I think there's a trap that we can fall into, and I've had to kind of course correct myself, and this is the strategy I now implement, is a lot of us probably come from, especially if you're kind of setting up an EMEA or you work for a US tech company, you're coming from a fairly successful business in a region already. And that successful business may have multiple use cases for the product. It may have multiple products. Want to do something a little bit more sophisticated. And I think there can be a huge temptation, James, to say, I'm going to come in this region and I'm going to try and do everything at once and kind of boil the ocean. What I've seen work really well is just kind of simplifying it, keeping it simple, right? So focus on one use case, could be one vertical, and really, really nail that. Get your teams to be able to do that flawlessly, so that you can kind of just capture that market sector or market share really, really well, before you then decide to then try and say, right, let me go into selling into a different vertical or a different use case or different products. Like, that's always worked well for me, just getting the team to do one thing really, really well before expanding and doing more. Nice.
Okay. Here's a question that, even though we're way on the other side of COVID now, this question is related to kind of virtual selling and remote work. There's naturally, we're much more comfortable. We're all online now, doing business online. I'm just wondering how have you approached managing an international geographically dispersed team from a virtual and then like a hybrid setup? Like, what's the structure, and how do you manage your teams across different kind of geographies? And also, how does that impact selling for you as well? Like, are you back to in-person selling? Like, what's the regularity of it?
Yeah. First of all, it's really, really long days when you do the UK, US, and then Australia. So you're pretty much kind of round the clock. I think in the US, we're a remote first company, right? So we have offices, but there's no need to kind of be in an office. You can come in there if you want. One of the big things that I insisted on with my exec team when taking the role was to have a hybrid type model in our international markets. And that meant 2 days a week that everyone's in, and it's the same 2 days that people are in. And the reason for that is I had a combination in all of my geos of what we would class as a landing team. So where I had super good talent coming from the US across a multiple number of roles and functions that knew how to do their role really well, but also knew Attentive really well. And the second part was hiring really exceptional good talent in region. And having that hybrid model where you're in 2 days a week, I think means that you reduce ramp time significantly. You are able to kind of just collaborate a lot easier. Sometimes it's so much easier to just jump in a room and whiteboard something as opposed to set up a kind of like an online Zoom call or a Google Meet. And then lastly, it's the culture part, right? I think that ability to have everyone in a room, kind of get to know your colleagues, work hard, but even go for a beer afterwards has really helped kind of solidify and align that team together. And I think we do that in all of our geos internationally. Your second question around kind of what does that look like from a selling point of view? Like, yeah, we would always go and see customers and prospects. If you can go and see them, then 100% go and see them. I think we can be guilty now just because we've come out of COVID of saying, right, we need to do everything online. When you can get the opportunity, I'd always say, and I encourage the teams to go and see our prospects and customers face to face. I know it's difficult as well because it's not necessarily on our end. Sometimes our customers and prospects have a remote working system, all their teams are not in, but any opportunity we can, definitely go and do so.
And how does that, like, I mean, this is probably an obvious question now thinking about it, but like, how do you overcome language barriers and different cultures, like from a selling perspective? Have you got localized teams in Europe, or is it mainly business is done in English?
Yes, I think when you look at the stages of international expansion, I think generally when I've done this before, it's like, okay, let's just take Europe for an EMEA as an example. Have the hub out of the UK. From there, you service the UK, and then you strategically kind of decide on countries that you want to target. And most of those initially, first stage will always be English-speaking countries that you don't have to make changes into the UI. Your team can sell it. You've got the SDRs that can speak English, the sales team that can sell in English. You've got your kind of customer support and CS team that can service those customers. So examples will be like the Nordics, it will be like Benelux, Netherlands, those types of countries where they're very much used to being sold to in English and working with European or US tech companies. I think that's first and foremost. I think the whole having people in the region is something that I have done before and would do, but that is a kind of a longer plan to look at as well. And then you do have complexities if you're going into France or Germany around kind of language area, the language barrier, but also take Germany, you've got the data residency situation in there. So that does take a lot of buying from HQ as well. But I think you do that by building trust, by slowly or quickly, shall I say, building a business in Europe that's kind of profitable and scaling in the right way.
Fantastic. Well, it's been super interesting to hear your insights and experience. We're just coming up to the final question now. There's a lot of aspiring sales leaders that are maybe leaders, for the first time in their career, and they would love to. You've placed some great bets. You've had some great exits. You're picking hyper growth companies. Have you got any advice for those aspiring sales leaders or leaders that want to take the next step of their career that you could impart, some final knowledge on?
Yeah, I think if I was going to give any advice, I think I've already mentioned around looking after people, so I won't go too deep into that. It'd be like, make sure you kind of tap into your emotional intelligence. I think that does happen naturally over time. The more you kind of do leadership and people management, I'd say there is so much on, be really clear with your goals. Like, you can have so many things you're working on. Try and keep that focus. Try and maybe work to 3 things that you're focusing on at any given time, and try to do those really, really well. And lastly would be, for me personally, is always surround yourself with a good network. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. I think it's important to be able to leverage and take insight and support from people that have either A, going through similar, or B, that have done or gone through what you're currently going through as well, and just be able to tap into that experience.
Amazing. Anup, what a pleasure to have you on board. Thanks for kicking off this year's event.